Good morning. We are live on YouTube. This is the Falcons Podcast. We want to bring in our Facebook groups. And while we're doing that, I want to say thank you to all of the new subscribers on YouTube. And several of you have checked in and said hello and said we're new here. Glad to have found the channel. Well, we're glad you have found us. Welcome in, everybody. This is the Falcons Podcast. I am your host, Scott Kennedy. And my co-host, Nick Kendall, is coming in from dad duty as we speak. I see him showing up right now. I will bring him in. I am in Atlanta. Nick over here is in Seattle. So we're coast to coast here. He gets up bright and early, or stays up as it may be, depending on where are we now? We're almost at 1 month, aren't we?
Just a little past.
Yeah,
a little past.
Past 4 weeks old.
Yep. So he's coming up. He was 4 weeks on Sunday. So yeah, he's doing well. He's sleeping a little bit better, but we're reaching the really gassy spit up stage, which is I'm still in that stage, honestly.
Yeah,
but I know it's a lot of fun. He's hasn't really started tracking yet movement, but he's locking onto you when you're feeding him, which is just mind blowing. Just kind of day by day how much he's changing and growing. Yeah. So it's unbelievable.
It keeps getting better, Nick. It really does. It's cool, and then it just keeps getting better, and you just slow down. The first time I caught myself saying, man, I can't wait until. Yes, you can. You can absolutely freaking wait, because you're going to blink twice, and he's going to be out of the house. I turned my gain down just a little bit, so in the comments, let me know if my sound is okay. I was catching a little reverb when I was re-listening, and I didn't like the way it sounded, so let me know if it sounds a little hot or a little too low, a little too high. I take criticism. I take constructive criticism. Lots to go over today. Raheem Morris had a little bit over an hour press conference. And frankly, Nick, the man won the press conference. For whatever that's worth, when we talk about guys who interview well and he must have really blown him away. I can see why Raheem Morris would interview well. He's got me excited. I'm a 50-year-old Atlanta guy. I don't get excited about anything. But I'm ready to go play for this guy. So we'll get into some of that. We'll get into some of the things he said. The quarterbacks, Kyle Pitts. We might hit on Quinn. I saw someone else mention Quinn in here. So a lot of things I wanted to talk about. There's already comments on here, so we'll use those as segues. But we want to say hello to some folks that have come in nice and early, like John Harrell. He's coming over on YouTube. He says, good morning, Scott, Nick, and the boys. And the ladies, if they happen to be here. This is a kind of a male-dominated show, but we like football women. Like 50% of the NFL, probably more now that Taylor Smith is involved, is women. It was like 48 to 52% for NFL fans. It was a very split demographic, and it might be leaning the other way in Kansas City right now.
Taylor Swift mania. I don't know. I don't subscribe to all the weird conspiracy theory stuff, but man, she's definitely bringing new eyeballs onto the game, and that can be a good thing. It's just, why did it have to be the bleeping Chiefs, man? I'm so tired of the Chiefs. Why couldn't she have been dated like Jared Goff or something? That'd have been a lot of fun. Give Detroit a little shine, not the Chiefs. Yeah. They've had enough. It's already too good there.
Yeah, they didn't actually need it, and the NFL doesn't need it. Someone said, "Oh, I saw a comment on here. I posted Travis Kelce video yesterday. I saw a comment saying, oh, the ratings were falling, so they needed a bump." I'm like, what? Like, the NFL's not going anywhere, y'all. It's a freaking behemoth. Michael Red Swarm says, good morning. Cheers with the coffee. Michael Ranquillo, he's up bright and early with us, says, good morning, Scott and Nick on the Falcons podcast. My Swanker has a nice early question. He says, do you think we trade up for a franchise quarterback or trade down for a future quarterback in the draft, or stay put at number 8 and draft a quarterback, or make a trade and get a quarterback, or free agency? That's what I'm thinking of. I'm like, those are the options. And Nick, one of the more interesting things that's happened this week, when talking about the quarterback, you know whose name was never mentioned once in about 6 questions about getting the next quarterback in Atlanta? Desmond Ridder. Desmond Ridder's name was not mentioned. The other part, Arthur Smith introduced, or I'm not even sure how it came about. It started coming to me about, what he's done. He's like, yeah, I've worked with some good quarterbacks. I've worked with some guys like Ryan Tannehill and Matt Ryan and some other young quarterbacks. It's like Desmond Ridder is all of a sudden just falling off the face of the earth. It was bad. It was bad last year. No one wants to claim Desmond Ridder.
I mean, I've said it on here before in other shows. If you are a day 2 pick at quarterback, if you are ever given a shot, which is not a guarantee as a day 2 quarterback, you better run with it. because this is the NFL. It's a results business, and teams are not married to your success like a first round pick or a big veteran they signed. They're not going to give you every opportunity to go out there and do it. So Desmond Ridder, I mean, it's possible as far as a starter, his son might have already set in the NFL. Those windows and those opportunities are small, though. You might have a chance to stick around. I think he can be a really good backup quarterback. Don't get me wrong, but as far as a starter, I don't know. So we'll see. I think still you're happy to have him on his rookie contract, though.
Yeah, like I've said, he's cheap and he's got some experience. There's no reason not to have him on the roster. You could do worse at the backup position. And if he takes the next step and wins out a job and becomes that, but he would have to progress massively to become that guy. But if he does, so be it. So he'll get to stick around in the league for a little bit longer. So he will get his opportunities, but he's never going to have one gifted to him like he did last year, which cost some guys their jobs. But do we think, Mike Swanker, the answer on this one is I don't know. I really don't. We can get into this. We will get into this about several of the options that are available. But what was interesting to me was you cannot come out of that press conference and think anything other than what we've been saying for the last 6 months is that the Atlanta Falcons are going in big for a quarterback in 2024. Whether they get that guy is a different story because there's lots of teams. There's several of them that are going to be going in big for a quarterback. I think the hardest one of these, my Swanker, is going to be to trade up. I think the hardest one's going to be to try and get up in the top 3 to get Jaden Daniels, Drake May, or Caleb Williams. I think those are the 3 that are most untouchable right now as far as the ones that are available, because technically they are. Kirk Cousins is a free agent. That he's available. If the Bears draft Caleb Williams and Justin Fields is available. So of the 3 guys that are available, I think those are the 3 most untouchable, Nick. Unattainable.
I think that anything can happen still. I'd think maybe not anything. I don't see the Falcons' ability to get up to number 1. I think that if it's probably Caleb Williams there, so we'll see about that. But if the Commanders end up taking Jaden Daniels instead of Drake May because of the Cliff Kingsbury air raid stuff there, they want maybe somebody that's 10 personnel and then can tuck and run if that first read's not there, rather than staying in the pocket, surveying the whole field, more of a prototype. Then maybe Drake May falls to 3. Although I think if May falls to 3, then it is probably a quarterback there as well. So
I think it's quarterback no matter what.
I've heard
the question is okay, does Jared Mayo hate the available quarterback and wants to gets a Randy Moss? When Randy Moss was in New England, Tom Brady threw 50 touchdown passes that year, I think, and get that guy. But then what's it going to cost? It's going to cost you 3 first-round draft picks, or let me see. It was Swanker followed up. He says, would it be possible to use Pitts in a trade or maybe AJ Terrell? Yeah, it would be. We can get into that also here in a little bit. Victor says, good morning, guys. You think that if we trade up to top 3, I'm on record saying I don't think anybody's trading up to top 3. I think the 3 teams in the top 3 all need a quarterback. I don't think they're going to give that spot up. If there's any trades, Nick, it might be within the top 3. 1 and 3 switch or whatnot. And still, and even with that, it would mean I think that the Bears are keeping Fields, and I don't think the Bears are keeping Fields. They want their quarterback on a new contract and to kind of reset everything so that they can have a rookie contract and fire their coach next year after firing all of the coaching staff this year and start over in 2025. Victor says, would it be before free agency if you were to make that trade? No. I think if you were to make that trade, it would be after free agency, and it would be because you didn't get your quarterback, and now you need to overpay to get into that. So I think if there's a trade, it would become week of draft. It would become it would become after free agency, because if you're going to try and go after a guy, then you're not as desperate. You wouldn't necessarily want to trade up if you go and get Russell Wilson or spend on Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, typically you see that move happen around pro days / the combine for those big moves up where, okay, we like any of the top 3, we're fine moving up to number 3. I think it was almost.
But that is before free agency.
The pro days?
Combine is.
Okay. Yeah. That's
Combine's
right.
End of February.
So that's when the groundwork starts happening. But I think the last couple of times you see those moves happen, they had been surrounding like pro days and whatnot. So there was the Zach Wilson pro day. And then I think the very next day, the 49ers traded up to 3 because they're like, we'd be happy with Wilson or Trey Lance or Mac Jones, I guess. But definitely, I don't see it happening before free agency unless, I mean, they're working the deals right now. There's no doubt. They're already on the phones. A lot of teams are trying to do that. They're laying the groundwork saying, okay, what it'll take. Okay, we'll get back to you. We want to see how a few things play out. But there's always the possibility that you throw something out there and like, you know what? We like that. We'll jump on it. So probably not going to happen before free agency, but never say never. There's probably a lot of irons in the fire right now for the Falcons at quarterback.
Yeah, there's lots, 5 different avenues, including, okay, you're going to stick with what you've got. That's the least likely. I think he'll still be there. I think Desmond Ritter's on this roster next year.
Yeah.
Greg, good to see you. Greg Custom Kicks with a Z coming in with a super chat. Thank you, my friend. Breaking the ice for us this morning. Remember, the most direct way to support the stuff that Nick and I do on these channels is just like Greg did with a super chat or stars on Facebook. He definitely had me ready to get my jersey and go play. If he pulls this off and brings a winning culture back to Atlanta, who gives a damn about his past woes? And he was asked about it again. That was 15 years ago. He was asked about it several times. What's the difference between now and then? And he kind of had his big smile. His teeth are perfect, by the way. He looked like a mafia guy in that suit. Like, I posted the picture on the Facebook channel. I was like, damn. I didn't say he looks good, but I said that looks good. He looked good. I wish I looked like that in a suit. He says, at 32, and he flashed this big grin. He goes, you got all the answers. You know everything. So it's a humbling. The more you learn, the less you know. It's one of those things. Well, I said it from the beginning, Greg. I said it last year during the coaching search for different teams about Raheem Morris, and I compared him to Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin was cocky, brash, arrogant, born on third base, thought he hit a triple, and then flamed out mightily, was humbled, came back, and showed that he's a pretty damn good coach. What was he down at FIU or FAU or something? Florida International, I think.
I think so.
And then did well down there, and he's been doing really well at Ole Miss. Raheem Morris, cocky, brash, arrogant, down at 32, 33-year-old kid down at Tampa Bay. Flames out. But how do you get a shot like that, especially as a young black man, at 32 years old, unless you're pretty damn sharp? Mm-hmm. He just wasn't ready for it. Well, now you've got the brains and the skill and the talent with the experience. Maybe you got something, Greg. Maybe you do.
Yeah, he was impressive yesterday. All reports are he was extremely impressive in the interview process. And I wouldn't say he's, worldly is probably the wrong word. Experience is a good one too, but he's seen things. He's been able to rub elbows with a lot of different good football minds on both sides of the football. So he should be a problem solver on this team. Now, is he going to be an innovator? Is that the type of coach he can be? Not every single coach is that innovator at the end of the day. It's kind of hard to answer until we see it out there. Like we can say Vic Fangio has been an innovator. Spagnuolo at Kansas City has been an innovator as of late. Obviously, Mike McDonald out there in Seattle now has been an innovator. What are we going to see? Are we going to see any innovation schematic wise from Raheem Morris? Doesn't have to be that guy to be a successful coach.
That's kind of what I'm thinking of, Nick, is I don't think you have to reinvent the wheel to win.
No, it does help to have answers. And right. One thing is a lot of things, I think we've talked about it before. Things are cyclical. There's never anything that's actually truly, truly new. It's just like new ways and new players to utilize past concepts and finding those players and putting them in the best spots to succeed. So he's, again, seen things, has a lot of different ideas and backgrounds where he's going to hopefully be able to put guys in position to succeed and really give you a good chance in the NFC South. Probably more of a CEO type in the end, but excited to see what he can do. And also, again, I've said it on this show a lot of times, not enough credit or thought is put into the head coaching cycles with the staff they put around them. Because he's had so much experience with different staffs on both sides of the ball, people are going to know Raheem Morris. Sounds like people really like Raheem Morris. Sounds like people would like to work with Raheem Morris. So the staff that you're able to get around him is a huge part of that head coaching hire. And Raheem Morris is probably going to be able to get a pretty good one around him.
Already done for the most part. And that was one of my notes to talk a little bit about the staff. Oblivion Empire says, what's good? What's good is the staff that Raheem Morris has been able to put around him. If I'm looking at the Atlanta coaching staff from last year, there's 2 guys. Well, Ryan Nielsen's out. I wouldn't mind keeping Ryan Nielsen too. But two guys that for me were the main guys I wanted to stick around: Wayne Ledford, offensive line coach, and Jerry Gray, defensive back coach. They will have similar roles, but then you get an elevation in title that goes with it. They're still there. Those were huge hires, and you can talk about. I can't remember if it's Marcus Robinson. I apologize. A special teams coordinator stuck around. That usually comes down to, are you kicking? That comes down to usually like you're punting. Do you have a good kicker, and do you have good punt coverage because you're kicking it out of the back of the end zone every time? Is what that usually boils down to, because onside kicks are a thing of the past, but punting and punt coverage are huge. And then Younghoe Koo, let's not play for 53-yard field goals every time. Let's see if we can get a little closer every now and then. But that's good, and a cool moment in the press conference. Terry Fontenot and Raheem Morris talking about how Terry is such a student of the game. He says, I used to watch your press conferences in Tampa. And he said he had a really good saying. He says, it's a mentality before it's a reality. And Raheem was like, damn, I did say that. That's cool. That is cool. I started thinking, I want a shirt for that. I want to give it to my kid. This is kids, both of them. It's a mentality before it's a reality. And, as I'm watching mine get up at 6 a.m. to go to morning workouts and staying after and going into field days and stuff, and all these overprivileged athletes, and you see how much work they have to put in, dude, they earn it. But you've got to go in and earn it. That was very cool. Silas Draven, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Silas. Good to see you. Feel like it's been a little bit. But good to have him here. Mike Balls. Good morning, Scott. Adam Schefter thinks the Bears will get at least a second rounder for Fields. Would you pull the trigger for Atlanta? I wouldn't get more than a third. What do you think? Because I said he'd be worth a first rounder through a lot of the middle of the season. I said that someone out there, that the Bears could probably get a first rounder for Fields because of the teams, because of the quarterback craze. What are the odds? What do you think? What would you pay for him as a quarterback needy team in Atlanta, knowing you might be going up against Arthur Smith and the Pittsburgh Steelers, among others, the Denver Broncos, nice cheap quarterback. There's going to be Fields is going to have a market.
Mm-hmm. He's had issues playing on time. He's had issues playing over the middle of the field, and probably more importantly, only 1 year left of contractual control. Probably not extending that 5th-year option on him, and been injury prone. Missed a lot of time due to various dings and bruises. So that all to me says day 2 pick. I've said from, I think, the beginning, you're kind of looking similar to the Sam Darnold Jets to Carolina package, which I believe was a 2 and a 3.
It was a second. I think it was just a second. I could be wrong on that, but I thought it was just a second.
So I think probably you're talking about a second. It could be where it's a third and then if I was a general manager, I'd be using conditional picks left and right, where it's like, okay, well, you get the third now, and for 2025, you can get a 4 or 3, depending on if we assign him or it hits these, starting marks or anything like that. So that's probably what I would do. But I think, at least a second rounder makes sense. I think probably a second or an early third plus a future conditional pick is the
it was a 2 and a 4, and then I think they made the mistake of immediately picking up his 5th-year option.
Yep.
Which was $20 million guaranteed. I would have rather, and I've said this before, Mike, and Falcons fans, if you make this trade for him, do you pick up his 5th-year option? No, you don't. His 5th-year option somewhere in the neighborhood. I've got this bookmarked, but it's 20 plus. His 5th-year option as a quarterback, the 11 overall pick, his 5th-year option is $22 million. Okay, I don't want to be guaranteed $22 million. It's enough that I would give up a second-round pick. And if Calvin Ridley gets re-signed by the Jaguars and that third becomes a second, I got no problem sending that second for Justin Fields. I've already got one that's bonus. And frankly, Nick, I didn't notice it. One of our viewers did. Thank you very much. PFF doesn't have that pick in the mock draft simulator. So we missed out on a third that could be a second when we did our mock draft on Monday. If I've got 2 seconds, I'd send one of those for Justin Fields, and I would not pick up his 5th-year option of $23 million. I'd make him earn it. What's his number right now? I don't know what it is. It's similar. It's less than Kyle Pitts this year. I won't get into all that again about 5th-year options and stuff. I won't get into that right now. But I would risk and gamble that he has the type of season that I would have to go pay him double that, because you know what, it'd be worth it. Or 30 million, 35 million, get him a Daniel Jones. I would take that risk, because if he plays like a quarterback that is worth a 30 to 40 million dollar contract in 2025, this team's in the playoffs. They are absolutely in the playoffs. That's worth the risk to me. I'll risk it. It's like, listen, I'm not gonna give you an option. I'm not gonna pick up your option. I'm gonna give you the opportunity to make double that. Go earn it, kid. Go take it.
Where is he in the rank of options for you this offseason? So, like, obviously, I think number one would be moving up for a May or Daniels.
Yeah, getting one of the top three would be my favorite option. It's interesting, and we'll get into all of this stuff. If Arthur Smith was here and it was a win now quarterback, and you had to go draft, if I had to draft a guy to win right now, I would probably go Bo Nix. I think he is the most ready, the most
outside of the
floor
top
and
three.
his ceiling feel like they're about that far apart.
You mean outside the top three, though, right?
Yeah, outside of the top three.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, outside of the top three, who I've kind of put out of play
in a box.
The most win now quarterback right now for me is probably in the draft is probably Bo Nix. I think he's just kind of robotic, kind of automatic. The arm strength bothers me about the upside, but when you see him get in there, it's like, okay, good processing, good field vision, good accuracy, good size, good athleticism. Okay, I need all of that right now. I need all of that right now. With Raheem Morris, knowing that you don't have to, he's not going to get fired after 1 year unless something just goes completely off the rails. I'd rather go with the 21-year-old with a bigger arm. I'd rather go JJ McCarthy. If I had to take one at 8, frankly, I'd rather trade down. Would I rather use a second on Justin Fields? What I might like doing is signing Russell Wilson for nothing and then drafting a quarterback on day 2 in the second round. Take my favorite guy of day 2. There's a mock draft that we can go out there. It's on the 33rd team. I can drop it in the chat, but it's 2 rounds, and it was post Senior Bowl, and it's got Bo Nix at 39 and Michael Penix at 42. Oh, I'd be happy with that. I wouldn't mind signing Russell Wilson for nothing and getting one of those 2 in the second. I could be pretty happy with that. Kirk Cousins scares the crap out of me because of his age, his price, and his injury.
Yeah.
All 3 of those things.
Yeah, I mean, if it was money was no object, trying to win one game, probably Kirk Cousins, but it does depend a lot on the injury history. Also with Robinson, I mean, is there a certain style of quarterback you're looking for there? Is it going to be more of the pocket-centric quarterback Matt Stafford's a trick shot king, so I don't know if he's the archetype that you can get here, but, Jared Goff, cerebral pocket, not always the best under pressure, but, hits the back foot and knows where to go with the football. There's value to that. So it'll be really interesting. It's not going to be Ritter unless everything goes totally wrong here. I do think that Russell Wilson makes a lot of sense for where you're at. But again, I think Russell Wilson made a lot more sense for Arthur Smith. Does he make as much sense for Robinson? That adds a different level of complexity to this evaluation.
Yep. I like the price, and you've got no problem benching Russell Wilson if you need to.
Yeah.
Because he's coming in for $1.5 million.
You better be careful, because the PR from his side is going to paint you to
too bad. That's already the Denver Broncos already took that.
Yeah,
they've already taken that bad hit. It wouldn't mean anything with his next team will be under no pressure obligation to do anything with Russell Wilson. So therefore, he is a zero. Russell Wilson is a zero risk opportunity for a team. I like that. Like that. Robbie Rez says, Mr. Kennedy. I think I've told y'all before, I turned that Mr. Kennedy into a walk-up theme for my son for his baseball. Number 4, and then throw in Mr. Kennedy, and then it goes right into Peyote's boom. It's pretty cool. It's a little over the top, though, so I may only do that like his senior year or something one time. Evan, this was one of my notes also. Good to see you, Evan. Appreciate you being here today. He says, good morning. While Dan Quinn was in Washington recycling his old stuff about brotherhood and energy, I couldn't help but watch Raheem and be excited about the future of the franchise. Next up, find a QB. And like I said, Raheem Morris won the press conference. For whatever that's worth, he won it. And Dan Quinn, my buddy's texting me. He's like, they're playing Dan Quinn's press conference over Atlanta radio, and it's hilarious. And I always think, they said they're calling him Sergeant Slogan on here. And, I always think back to, teach me something else from Bull Durham. Teach me something else. All right, you got to learn your cliches. You got to love them. They're your friends. You can see why Dan Quinn may not have aced the interview process quite the same as Raheem Morris. Now, is that going to win games? No, it's not. But I'll tell you what, I like what I've seen from Raheem Morris up to this point, including the staff. I mean, that's the biggest thing he needed to do, as you said right now, Nick, was a staff. You go Jimmy Lake, you keep Jerry Gray, you keep Dwayne Ledford, the offensive line coach, you bring in Zach Robinson. You basically got your number one choices at all of your positions. Nice.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard with the coaching staff too, right? You don't really know until you know. I remember a year ago, definitely I will, be accountable and say that, hey, man, I really kind of like what Carolina's looking like here. You got this coach and this coach and this coach, and then it all falls apart. They deal with adversity and they kind of go into silos and finger pointing, and it just absolutely devolves into a horrific season for Carolina. So for coaching staffs, you don't really know until they've had to deal with adversity. And at the end of the day, it's about the guys on the field, not as much the coaching staff at the NFL level. But I digress. It looks like it to be a really good coaching staff. There's no reason to not be optimistic other than to the extent of we still want to see the results. At the end of the day, it's okay to pump the brakes a little bit, but definitely should be optimistic about the group. Everything that we have information-wise, access-wise, sounds like people in the know, people that know these people are really excited about them, and Falcons fans should be as well.
Well, and the idea that they know they have to go get a quarterback. Now, whether they can or not, but, and again, I don't want to just completely discount Desmond Ridder. I'm not going to just wheelchair him off. They're talking about Kirk Cousins and wheelchairs. I'm not just going to throw him off the cliff.
Mm-hmm.
No, let him, if he takes that leap, if he gets that rookie year, which was what it was last year, because they didn't play him his rookie season until a couple garbage games at the end and no preseason. If he progresses and becomes the guy, great. That would be the best case scenario. I think back to, was it Matt Flynn got the big contract from Seattle? They bring in a second-round rookie and Russell Wilson. I think he was second round, third round rookie, and the third-round rookie beats him in, and you put your expensive guy on the bench. Fine. We don't care.
Mm-hmm.
We don't care. I mean, some people do. Some people are fans of players and not. And we saw that with Russell Wilson. Some people are fans of players and not teams. That doesn't really go for it here. Now, there's some people that'll say, I don't even want to see it because I'm so convinced. Well, at the end of the day, you don't care who's playing well. You just want to see him playing well. Think about the only time I didn't feel like that was D'Angelo Hall. I think he's the only Falcon in the history of Falcons I've actively rooted against because he was such a turd in Atlanta. Edward Brown comes in. Is Danielle Hunter an unrestricted free agent? Yes, he is. And if so, what kind of contract do you think he will be looking for in the open market? Nick, I'll let you give some thoughts on this, and then I'm going to look up some actual numbers.
I think he's probably somebody, given his injury history, might take a little bit less on the surface of APY, average per year, looking for more guarantees. And I think teams might be the other end, where they're like, okay, we'll give you a sticker price might be higher, but the actual guarantees might be a little lower. So I'm guessing I'll probably end with a top 12 level edge rusher contract, whatever that looks like. I don't know the specifics of the position by position, but top 12 makes sense. The cap is exploding, especially with all the streaming stuff coming down the line here pretty soon in the new TV deals. So top 12 would be my expectation. But at the end of the day, for Danielle Hunter, given his injury history, it's going to be those guarantees that are the kicker.
There's a decent drop off from Von Miller to Harold Landry at 11 to 12, from 20 to 17.5.
I'm guessing probably 18.5.
Yeah, Nick Bosa is up there at 34. Then there's a big drop off to TJ Watt. And then Joey Bosa is at 27. Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Bosa. Yeah. And then Myles Garrett at 25. And then there's really kind of a lump in there down to Trey Hendrickson at 21. So 20, okay. Total at 10 and Von's at 20. It wouldn't totally surprise me to see him in that 21-22 range.
Yeah.
So let's call it a 3-year, $65 million deal with 40 guaranteed.
That sounds pretty good.
That becomes a 2-year, $20 million a year deal.
Yeah, he's going to have to pass physicals,
Mhm.
which is going to be a concern for him. I know I think there's a knee concern for him, but he's going to be wanted. I think on the surface right now, he wouldn't be my first edge on the market. That would be one Josh Allen from Jacksonville. We'll see if he gets out from there. I don't know if that'll happen. But yeah, Daniel Hunter, probably that makes a lot of sense. 18.5 to 22 million per year and 60 to 65% of it guaranteed. I mean, it just makes sense.
Appreciate you, Edward. Thank you for the super chat, my friend. I'm with Paul Ingram. I'm not going to show it because it'll take me a while to find it. I'm just going to read it. But Paul over on Facebook says, as you enter the stadium, you drop your name in a box if you want to play quarterback that day. If your name is drawn, you start for the Falcons. Millions of dollars saved, same results. Well, the Minnesota Vikings pulled that off in Atlanta last year. They brought a guy in off the MARTA train in the middle of the first quarter and brought in Josh Dobbs. Like, hey, Josh Dobbs just got here. Put him in. And beat the Falcons. That's how I felt about that one. Marco Z, I appreciate you. Says best Falcons content in the world. Well, thank you, my friend. There's a lot of good guys out there doing this stuff, and it's fun that it's more of a collaborative effort amongst content providers. When I first started doing this type of thing, the internet was just getting going, and there was like two sites, Rivals, and Scout was the Insider's End, doing team-based stuff, and man, they were at their throats because they're competing for publishers, and now it's big enough for all of us, man. So we appreciate. So check them out. Go get the Out of Your Falcon Minds and Smitty and all those guys, good dudes. But he asked, would you trade next year's first, Tyler Algier, Kyle Pitts to move for the first pick? I would trade this year's first, next year's first, Tyler Algier and Kyle Pitts for the first. And the Chicago Bears would still laugh at me.
I mean, it depends on what they think of Kyle Pitts. They do already have a pretty good tight end there in Cole Kmet, but Kyle Pitts is in wide receiver, tight end hybrid. That's kind of different than any piece they have right now. So, yeah, what do you think Algier? I mean, let's break this down. What is Algier worth getting for you right now? A fourth round pick? Maybe. I mean, he's a good running back, but he's 2 years down the hole now, and he is a running back. So you're probably talking a fourth round pick, which is great because you spend a fifth and you have less years of control. So that's a great pick. You remember Scott? We were dancing up and down when they took him. We loved that pick. Kyle Pitts probably worth a third right now, maybe a late second because he is still exceedingly young. You're talking about a Pro Bowl tight end. He dealt with an injury 2 seasons ago. So I think you probably, if you tossed in this year's first, next year's first, a second round pick this year in those two players, maybe they pick up the phone. I think you probably still have to squeeze out a little bit more at the end of the day, but there's a possibility where you can hold on to that 2026 first. The issue is you're going to be competing with the Giants, with the Commanders, with the Patriots, with the Vikings, with the Broncos, with a bunch of teams that would love to come up too. So it's not just what is precedent for trading up to number one. It's what are these other teams offering and can you beat that?
Here's the thing about potential that is scary about this Marco Z and Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts is younger than both Bo Nix and Michael Penix, two quarterbacks in this draft, considerably younger. It's like 6 months on one and 4 months on the other one. He's 23. He'll turn 24 in September. He started the season at 20. If he had played the last 3 seasons with the Florida Gators in college instead of as a 21, 22, 23-year-old man, instead of with the Atlanta Falcons, where would we be talking about him being drafted this year? Top 5 again? Maybe.
Probably. It's a really good class in terms of, it was a good class then too, but
yeah,
it's good in the, man, I don't know. Maybe he'd still be up there. I think people,
but it's a real good question. And
it's hard to
that's where you start talking about Justin Fields. Justin Fields is only a year older than Bo Nix and Michael Penix. Now, we've seen him in the NFL, but what if he had been playing college football in one of these, in the Pac-12 for the last 3 years instead of playing with the Chicago Bears? He would have put up Tecmo Bowl numbers. And we'd be talking, I mean, Lamar Jackson was like that at Louisville, and I feel like it was like fatigue. It's like, oh, this isn't really real. We're not going to pay attention to him anymore because he was so good. Should have paid a little more attention instead of letting him draft where he was. Justin Fields would have had numbers like that at this age. Instead, he's in the NFL. Kyle Pitts So again, sometimes I tell people, get out of your head a little bit. Your first impression is the right impression, because these guys are they're babies. There's guys in the draft coming out there's a lot of guys in the draft coming out that are older than Kyle Pitts. But Kyle Pitts, one of the things, and this is what's going to be interesting. Kyle Pitts was trending after Raheem Morris's press conference because, and I wanted to get into this, so this is as good a time as any, because when he was asked, what are you excited about with this Falcons team? And Raheem Morris goes, that's easy, Drake London. And he kind of paused and he goes, Bijan Robinson. And then he immediately just went in. So I don't think that was necessarily a slight on Kyle Pitts. And he goes, this man sitting next to me, Terry Fontenot, has done a great job of acquiring talented pieces of the offense that we can go and win with right away. I'm paraphrasing here. But he kind of rolled into it, So Kyle Pitts, all of a sudden, by omission, was out, according to Twitter, according to Twix. Oh, Raheem Morris doesn't like Kyle Pitts. I didn't read it that way. But, Nick, could we? Could we look at it and say maybe Kyle Pitts is a trade piece this offseason, or is one of the things, because they just hired a new tight end coach too from the San Diego Chargers. That didn't take long. From the LA Chargers, Koger, I think is who it was. They just hired a new tight ends coach. Is one of the things that this team needs to do to be successful is to get a tune out of Kyle Pitts.
I think it maybe does say something that he's a little bit of an afterthought, not on obviously the forefront of the mind when asked about that. They'll probably at least listen. If somebody calls, they'll be like, okay, well, what would it take to get Kyle Pitts? I'm like, I'm listening. Keep saying, and I'll stop you when there's a number I like. But I don't think they're also going to be actively shopping him. You still have years of control. Tight end typically takes some time. Another year off of that significant knee injury that was dealt at the hands of Eddie Jackson and the Bears a couple seasons ago. So sorry, Scott, I had to twist you a little bit on that one. He won, I think he was Walter Payton Man of the Year for the Bears, if I'm not mistaken, but I digress.
That's all right. Soapbox for 1 second. We need like sound effects, like soapbox. You can't go after anybody's knees anywhere on the field except in the defensive backfield when their back is turned and they're catching a ball. That's got to change. It's got to change. I mean, again, when owners start seeing their $20 million receivers go down, that's how things get changed. People are like, oh, the game's gotten soft. Man, when you got $40 million into a quarterback, you don't want to see him being pile driven into the ground. It's an investment. And that type of tackle that ended Kyle Pitts' season and slowed him down this year needs to be taken out of the game. You can't block somebody like that. You can't hit quarterbacks like that. You should not be able to hit somebody low from behind like that out in the open field. Anyway, off soapbox.
I had to do it to you. Sorry. But I would be listening without a doubt, given the where he's at right now. But if somebody wanted, let's say offered a second round pick for him and a future 3, okay, we're talking the same price as Justin Fields there. So I would be interested there, but I don't know if you're going to get that value with what he's shown so far, where he's at. Still an extremely talented player, probably more valuable on your roster. Still hoping that he can figure it out and become more consistent with a new system here than trade him. So this is a big year for him. I wouldn't say it's make or break because there is so much talent still there, but big season.
Drake. Sorry, Drake. I'm going to start calling you Rusty Drake Moore Jr. He's all about Drake. And he says Drake is worth anything that you would have to give up. Appreciate the super chat, Rusty. Just talking about, the trade to trade. I just don't think you're going to be able to. You're only allowed to trade those guys. And I'm going to throw this in with Tyreek's comment over on Facebook. He said, would you package AJ Terrell in a trade if he's going to command $20 million as a free agent off of his 5th year option in 2025, when you've got a good chance of getting cornerbacks? The problem is if you're moving AJ Terrell, you're probably moving your first round pick also to try and make a trade. And then you wouldn't have one to get one of those cornerbacks. Would love to have Drake May. So again, going back to Marco Z's question, Algier Pitts, and next year at a 2025 first to move up for Drake May, but that's not going to get it done. It would take at least 2 first, this year's and next year's, and Kyle Pitts to even get the conversation started. What about putting AJ Terrell in there instead of Kyle Pitts? And that might be tougher. He's more expensive, and he's only got 1 year left on his deal. So it's going to be tough. The best options for the Falcons are those two guys who are still young and are in to play really well, give them contract extensions that lower their cap hits. And we could see Terrell's might be done this offseason where he gets his extension just like Chris Lindstrom did, plays on his 5th-year option at about $12-13 million. And then going back to the corners, I can't believe Jair Alexander has the number 1 average salary. He made me angry watching him play in the playoffs as soft as he was. I'm like actively avoiding contact. I'm like, really? He played like a guy who was $20 million and didn't want to lose it. He was getting paid by the game. The number 10 cornerback, Carlton Davis, is at 15. Darius Slay, 14. Shavarius Ward, 13.5. Xavier Howard, 18. Jalen Ramsey, 18. I think 15 to 16 is probably about right for AJ. If someone wants to offer him 20, I might say, all right, good luck to you. Or I might throw a franchise tag on him too. It's not that much more than what he'd be getting, and then try and trade him. I don't think you're going to let him walk for nothing, Nick.
Nah, probably not. Probably you're coming with a contract this season, $16 million, probably about the area that I would imagine he ends at the end of the day. Still a young player, been overall healthy, and a top 10 cornerback. As Ryan Adonis says, not high on AJ Terrell. He's in a star. He's just the ideal height, if anything. I mean, he's a good cornerback. I will be curious to see what Raheem Morris thinks of him, being defensive backs coach for a long time. So maybe then in the end they do approach him and he doesn't want the deal that they're going to offer him. I don't know. We'll see, but he's still a valuable piece. For me, the issue with AJ Terrell is not so much AJ Terrell. It is the pass rush in front of him. Cornerbacks are pretty damn they lose a lot of value if you can't win up front. And the Falcons have not been able to get home consistently to really accentuate your cornerbacks and allow you to play different types of coverages. So hard to evaluate.
Nick, let me ask you a question. How good was the Atlanta defensive secondary last year, considering the lack of pass rush?
I mean, really good. He wasn't the star. Obviously, that was Bates, but he was a damn good player out there and would be hard to miss. I get that he's not a superstar at cornerback. The other thing with cornerback is that they typically fall off a cliff after about their 6th, 7th season in the league, and he's already going to be, year 5? So the long-term contract, you might want to be a little bit, weary of paying him anything that's going to extend those cap hits, 4 or 5 years down the line.
I think one more deal for him would be okay. I think he's still just 27. So,
yeah.
He was younger coming out. He wasn't one of those 23-year-olds. So 27 years old and get him, a deal that pays him 4 guaranteed ish.
I'll have to find the tweet. Brett Coleman, I think his name. He does a really good, a lot of good YouTube stuff on here. Nice guy too. I apologize if I butcher his name. I got lack of sleep, newborn brain here. But he had a tweet that said like in the last 5 years there hasn't been a single all-pro cornerback that was under 20 or over 27 years old, and none of them have been beyond their 6th year in the league. So it's really a young man's position, not like running back where you totally fall off a cliff, but
maybe it's just cyclical. I mean, I grew up with Darrell Green, who played at that level until he was about 40. Darrell Green, again, those are the exceptions, I know, but when we're talking about all-pro, those guys, they are exceptions.
Yeah.
Deion was playing well into his 30s. Rod Woodson played into his 30s, was playing at that level, and then moved to safety. I don't know about Darrell Revis. I didn't get to watch him as much as I watched the other guys, how much he fell off or not. But just thinking of some of the truly great corners of my lifetime.
Yeah,
and those are what I just named 4 guys that came to mind.
It's a little bit of a different league, though, right?
Mm-hmm.
We see guys play. I mean, one example that comes to mind for me that's more recent is Jalen Ramsey. I mean, he was obviously a really good cornerback for a while, but he fell off. I mean, watching that Super Bowl a few years ago where they ended up winning, but like Ramsey was getting beat pretty consistently. I was like, oh man, that's not the no doubt number 1 cornerback Jalen Ramsey that the Rams traded for 2 first-round picks. This is a different guy now. So cornerbacks do tend to fall off. I think it was James Palmer too. He did an interview where it's like, yeah, cornerbacks are valuable, but a lot of team builders view them as closers. Like they're one of the last pieces you add to a roster because their window is much shorter than an edge rusher or an offensive tackle or a wide receiver or obviously a quarterback.
Yeah, like a tight end, is taking a tight end when your team is barren of anything else. That would be a final pick, Arthur, Terry. Come on.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, tight ends are a slow developing position a lot of times as well. I think offensive tackle is the only one that typically takes longer to reach their average in the league, or quarterback. But yeah, it'll be interesting to follow the AJ Terrell stuff. I see that. I guess I'm higher than on him than a lot of the chat. When I watch him, I think he's very good. I don't know if he's super versatile in his coverage. Like, is he a truly great man coverage cornerback, or is he more in that cover 2, cover 4 mold? That's a good question. Luckily, you have a good defensive mind in here and a defensive backs coach, multiple now, that can put the evaluation goggles on and say, this is what he's worth. Anything more than that, we'll let him walk.
Keith and Ellen Johnson, appreciate the stars this morning over on Facebook. He says, good morning, guys. Great news conference. All we need is a QB and some retooling of the defense. Yeah, again, the defense was good enough to be a playoff caliber defense last year. The offense should have been. If you had even the 21 and 2022 offenses with that defense, you were a playoff team. But the offense regressed so badly. I want to say almost inexplicably, but it was explainable. It was a bad marriage, and that's gone. So very interested to see what the Falcons do at quarterback, because there's so many. It feels like there's so many different ways, and then it also feels like there just aren't enough guys out there that they're for sure going to get a quarterback that is going to be a playoff caliber quarterback. Or there's limited supply and there's a lot of demand, I guess is what I'm trying to say, because Dave comes in. Good to see you, Dave. Coach Morris mentioned the word processor several times, among other traits, at quarterback several times. Elite processing talent. Which college guy could he be referring to?
I mean, any of these guys, you could be questioning that. I guess the one that the processing sometimes I question is Jaden Daniels, just because he is so electric as a runner that I felt a lot of times at LSU, and this was probably very much by design still, but it was a lot of spread concepts, a lot of vertical concepts, and if that first read wasn't there, he hit that back foot, boom, he's taken off. He's looking to be a runner, and I mean, you can't really argue with the results because it led to the Heisman and one of the better college offenses we've seen in the last decade. If LSU defense wasn't just atrocious and laughable, that could have been a feisty team this season. But alas, but Jaden Daniels, how much does that translate to the NFL game? I mean, we saw it with Lamar Jackson to an extent, but I think Lamar was a much better passer and processor and more developed passer at this point than what we're seeing from Daniels. Daniels is going to be 23. So I don't know if Daniels fits the processor boat, so to speak. I think Penix definitely does. I think obviously Drake May and Caleb Williams can as well. Caleb Williams is a little bit more of a chaos merchant. Again, is that because the design of the offense? Is that because he has to score 50 points in a game to even have a chance with how terrible the offensive line and the defense was for USC this season? I don't know. It's hard to say. But yeah, processing matters. We're in a very much a processing world. Teams are, I think it was you, Scott, that sent it to me. Maybe I sent it to you, but Bobby Slowick had a really good interview about where offenses are at nowadays. And it's like defenses are doing so well at making quarterbacks have to get to their second and third read. They're figuring out that first option, bracketing them, and making quarterbacks hold on the ball a little bit longer and get through their progression. So processing is important. The ability to play within the pocket, buy time as a pocket quarterback, that is super important. And areas that harder for a younger quarterback most of the time.
Chris Walker, looking through my Senior Bowl coverage on YouTube and Facebook, he says, good morning, Scott and Nick. Happy hump day. I was impressed with Darius Robinson, Braden Fisk, and Gray. Why am I drawing a blank on Gray? In the Senior Bowl. I would have liked to have seen Rattler play a few more series, though. Brady Cook, the Brock Purdy of 2024. Darius Robinson was a beast, and I've now seen him. Y'all have heard me. If you're new here, you'll know I really appreciate the team building that the Baltimore Ravens do. They basically just take the best guy. They take the best player, and if a guy slides for one reason or another, they take him. Oh, the positional value isn't great. Safety, Kyle Hamilton. We don't care. Oh, he's a little raw. Odafe Awe. We don't care. Darius Robinson in the first two mocks I read after the Senior Bowl, Darius Robinson's going to the Baltimore Ravens. I'm like, there you go. It just makes sense that they would get a guy like this, 6'5", 285 pounds, and bouncing around like a pogo stick. Braden Fisk, interior lineman, could be a rotational guy to start. I don't know if he's strong enough up front to handle the first down, running downs just right away, but really, really quick first step. Let me see. I've got my rosters here for open. Who is Gray? He's not on the American team. National, and I haven't gone through national through my one-on-ones yet. Cedric Gray, linebacker, North Carolina. Okay, that's who it was. I haven't watched the linebackers hardly at all, and I haven't gone through my teams on the national team yet. That's today and tomorrow project. I went through teams on there, and I'll tell you, on teams, a couple of guys that stood out when I was watching them to keep an eye on. Cornerback Carlton Johnson isn't even in Pro Football Focus's mock draft. He was a freaking blanket. He was all over everybody. Maybe a little undersized, about 180 pounds, out of Fresno State, but he didn't get invited to the Senior Bowl because he's completely unknown. So somebody knows this guy. Now a lot of people should know him. In the one-on-ones, I didn't really remember him standing out as much. And then when I watched all my team stuff and watched all the one-on-ones again, looking for defensive players, Nick, he was everywhere. And the other one who really stepped up in teams who wasn't quite as good as the one-on-ones, but when they went to 11v11, when I say teams, that's what I mean. 11v11 was Layden Robinson, interior lineman guard from Texas A&M, was spectacular on combination blocks, on picking up stunts and late blitzes. We talk about brains on an offensive lineman. Layden Robinson looked good, really good for Texas A&M.
Was he your guy who blanketed Robinson, held the block for 20 years?
No, the one I was talking about there was the wide receiver, was Ryan Flournoy.
Oh, yes.
Was a 6 foot, 200-pound receiver from Southeast Missouri State who was willing to do the dirty work in an all-star game practice to block a 290-pound defensive end and stay with them 15 yards down the field. That was a wide receiver. That was Southeast Missouri State's Ryan Flournoy.
Yes, that's all heart, man. Nothing gets me going like wide receiver blocking. So maybe it's the Iowa Hawkeye in me, where that's the only thing they bring to the table in that offense. But Mark Schrader coming in and saying good morning. Good to see you, Mark. Hope you're doing well. Always appreciate you coming in. Appreciate the birthday wishes yesterday. Talking about Raheem Morris getting that first job at 32. I'm there now as well, and I can't imagine being an NFL head coach at 32. So I don't know, crazy stuff, but excited to see what Raheem Morris can do this go around. And appreciate you, Mark. Hope you have a great day.
Yeah, I see Lawrence Rivera coming in with some stars too. And Keith and Ellen Johnson came in with some stars. Oh, Lawrence, you were a little before that. Lawrence with some stars says, "What up, guys? Have you seen the team that John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan put together through the draft? It's actually pretty amazing." No, I haven't seen that, but those guys have been around a while, so I'm sure they can. We'll have to check it out though. Appreciate the heads up, Lawrence. Appreciate the support as well. We're at 53 minutes. I'll go down to the very end of the chat and start coming up. Ryan Adonis has joined us. Always like to say hello to Ryan. He says Arthur Smith is going to kill Kenny Pickett's career real fast. I think it's kind of on life support anyway, Ryan. It wouldn't surprise me if I did a couple of pods over the weekend with Steelers guys, and I kind of called them out because I'm like, you guys are making it sound like Kenny Pickett's a foregone conclusion for next year, and that's just not how it feels like outside of Pittsburgh. And he was like, well, until something happens, we're just going to assume that that's what it is. I'm like, because wouldn't that be the height of irony if Justin Fields goes to the Steelers and Arthur Smith after he basically cost him his job in Atlanta? So Kenny Pickett's career is on life support as it is, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, as it should be. I could see him being somebody who's traded for, day 3 pick and getting a chance elsewhere, maybe the Baker Mayfield path. But yeah, he's not been very good in Pittsburgh, and the crown jewel of that terrible 2022 quarterback draft class. I guess that's not true. Brock Purdy would be that guy. but the first pick being the crown jewel. So highest rated prospect.
Yeah, Jason says Scott Kennedy should be the head of scouting for the Falcons. I'll start a petition. This is one of those if I knew then type of things. I would have walked on and gotten a year under my belt in college and just kicked something just to have it on the resume in college football, and would have been the guy that slept on couches and worked my way up and gotten into a front office at one point through the years. But by the time I really started doing this professionally, I was, I don't know, 26 years old, married at 27, kind of established, because it's a nomad life. When you're in this, it's a hard life. That was one of my favorite things when I was in my 30s doing this. Like, oh, if these guys were any good at this, they'd be on a team somewhere. I'm like, dude, I make 3 times much as what this poor guy sleeping on the couch makes, and I got a family. I can't do this. So would I change where things are now? No, but I did actually write my 18. Where are you going to be in 20 years? When I was 18, my senior year, and I was general manager of the San Diego Chargers at the time because I liked Air Coryell, and that was Miramar and Top Gun around then, and all kinds of stuff. So that was fun. So Bo the Holy D Show says good morning, good to see you. Kenneth is not a fan of Justin Fields because he thinks that quarterback win stats are really all that matters. Awesome Fields is 11-29. Ritter is 8-9. Great pick. I'd have you go look at Steve Barkowski's record and Archie Manning's record and see where they are before you decide if that's the way you want to pick a quarterback. Scott Kennedy joining Harbaugh confirmed. If he picked up the phone, I might be able to talk my wife to moving back to California. It'd be a little tougher on the kids, though. So we'll see. Joe Cannon comes in. He says, great late morning. Good to see you, Joe. If you've got any questions after the fact, put them in the chat. Otherwise, I think we're probably about ready to get out of here. Unless y'all have any burning questions, hit them in with a super chat. Otherwise, we're going to call it a day. I'm going to rest my throat. I'm trying not to get whatever is going around my household. And then I'm going to get back to work on my Senior Bowl stuff and start pumping out some videos. I've logged all of the all of it, the entire American team, which is a lot of the Southeastern guys. So I've got the offensive line done, which is, let me click on American here, which it takes a little bit longer to do those because you have to watch every 11v11 about 6 times. But that's Javion Cohen, Miami, Brandon Coleman, TCU, Jeremy Flax, Kentucky, Javon Foster, Missouri, Delmar Glaves, Tyler Guyton, Christian Haynes is someone to watch, Christian Jones is someone to watch, Bo Limmer, Patrick Paul, I liked him, Andrew Rame out of Oklahoma, Layden Robinson, I just mentioned him, and Charles Turner of LSU. And then all the defensive linemen, including Chris Braswell and Justin Eboigbe. I don't know how to pronounce his name, out of Alabama. So lots coming out. Nick, what are some of your final thoughts?
Falcons are in a pretty good spot. I still think the NFC South is pretty weak and up for grabs. You got the 3rd place schedule. You got 4 top 100 picks, and you're going to have a chance to potentially be within striking distance for a trade up at 8 overall, because I think 8 is still within the range of a team being willing to trade back. So if somebody slips, you're still in a good spot to go up and get them. If you want to trade back, you can get more picks in this class. It's going to be deep at wide receiver, cornerback, which is 2 areas that this team could add talent without a doubt. And all comes down to that quarterback at the end of the day. But things are looking positive for the Falcons. And we said that last season, but I think you should feel pretty good. Maybe it's just me looking at you guys in comparison to where the Broncos are at. But you're in a good spot overall, even though things didn't work as well this last season.
Ryan says, how about Joe Milton? Can we do anything with the big man? He would be a hold, draft and hold type of guy. If there was a question there, and I saw it last night about Spencer Rattler or Joe Milton. And how I answered this was, I think Spencer Rattler is good enough to actually compete for a spot to compete. If I needed a quarterback and I had Spencer Rattler, needed a starter, I think he could actually compete to be a starter next year. Now, he wouldn't be my first choice, probably not even my 4th choice. But if I didn't have a quarterback, I would rather have Spencer Rattler. If I already had a quarterback, let's say I'm San Francisco 49ers, I would take Joe Milton. And I would bet on the upside on this and trying to develop. I've said there's not a whole lot of development that really goes on. Guys progress through experience. Joe Milton would be an exception to that. He needs a lot of experience. He needs some coaching, developing, etc. But tools wise, he's probably the best quarterback out. He's got the best physical traits of the quarterbacks that aren't in the top 3 that would be available after day 2. So, I wouldn't expect him to play for 2 years, but I would take a day 3 flyer on him. Absolutely. I miss Jason. I apologize, Jason, with the super sticker. Thank you for coming in with the support on the show, Jason. You always do. So thank you so much. JB says, I'm not trading any picks for Justin Fields. And I get that. It'll be it's polarizing in Chicago. There's a faction that wants Justin Fields to stick around, trade the number 1 pick for a haul, because if they do, they're going to get 6 starters out of it, including 3 first-round draft picks probably. Steven has a good question over on Facebook. He says, question, guys, why can't we get Russell Wilson and draft Dallas Turner in 8, then draft Bo Nix, Penix, or even J.J. McCarthy? I've been talking for a while. Go ahead.
I think that it's definitely a possibility. Russell Wilson is a bridge quarterback at this point, so you can look at getting another quarterback also, since you should have 3 day 2 picks. If a J.J. McCarthy or a Bo Nix falls, no reason you can't trade up to 25, 27, 33, whatever, to go get that guy if you like them enough. So yeah, it's possible. You can go out there and get your top defensive player in this class, probably at 8 overall, whether that be Dallas Turner or potentially his teammate at cornerback in Terry and Arnold, and then go out there and get a quarterback as well. I think you talk about Penix. I think just talking with people more in the know with connections, sounds like Penix is probably more likely to be a round 3 quarterback than a round 1 quarterback because of the age, some of the stiffness, and the injury concerns with him. I wouldn't be, honestly, Scott, this might be a hot take, but from talking with people at the Senior Bowl, there is some belief that Rattler could go before Penix in this cycle. So that's, the potential, that dangerous word that gets people fired, but that's something to watch out for as well. But certainly, yeah, possible. Take the best guy available. I don't even think it has to be Dallas Turner. It could be a wide receiver at the end. It could be Roma Dunze or Malik Neighbors, and then go get a quarterback, because you have flexibility with the cachet of top 100 picks that you'll have.
I don't think that Spencer Rattler and Russell Wilson are actually bad comps in their style of play. Rattler's just a little bit bigger, but they're both a little Jake the Snake-ish, both freelancing to a certain extent, both a little bit greedy. But Stephen Womble on this one, I think Nick said it, but I think you would need to take 2 of your day 2 picks. It's either going to be a second and 2/3 or 2 seconds and a third, depending on what happens with Calvin Ridley in Jacksonville. You might have to trade up. I don't think Bo Nix or J.J. McCarthy. Penix might be there, and then you're worried about the knees and the shoulders. I don't think they're going to be around at 49. I think that's where they end up picking. I think that's their next pick. Apologies, but I don't think they're going to be there in the second round. So you could take 2 of those and trade back up and get one of those guys. But absolutely, Russell Wilson is a no-cost, no-risk option. He will not preclude you. I think that's the right word. Getting him is not going to stop you from trying to get a young quarterback too. So you can do both 100%. Yeah, I haven't seen anybody at 8 that I really want at quarterback except the top 3. So, do you take a guy in the second round? Very possibly. Do you package something back up and get into the back end of the first? Possibly. It's not a bad idea.
Yeah, the dark horse there for quarterback at 8 has got to be J.J. McCarthy, just because the volume of throws that he's asked to make is pretty low in terms of the NFL, them being NFL replicable. I don't know if that's the correct word, translatable. But it sounds like he's going to test extremely well, has a pretty good arm, and had the most under center true non-play action dropbacks this year, was some of the best on 3rd and 7+ in a style of offense that isn't giving many layups in terms of throwing the football. Now there are layups in terms of, because the way they're able to manipulate defenses with the heavy personnel and get you playing linebackers in space and coverage, which is always good. But it's more of an NFL game than what we saw from the RPO screen centric offense with Bo Nix and the not working the middle of the field, everything outside the numbers, shotgun-centric offense of the Washington Huskies. So it's an interesting conversation. I would not completely rule out J.J. McCarthy at 8 yet. It feels early, but it's the unknown. It's the potential. And it sounds like he's going to get in front of coaches and impress them if you believe the talk coming out of the Michigan men.
He looks like a 3 years younger right-handed Michael Penix. Who am I going to take first?
He's such a better athlete than Michael Penix. I think
because Michael Penix throws pretty well on the run, on the move too. That's what I'm looking at.
I'm gonna have to disagree with you on that. I think he plays extremely stiff. He has horrible numbers, moved off the spot as well. And I think
maybe it's a pressure thing because he threw some dimes down at the Senior Bowl when he was rolling.
Yeah, maybe it is. I felt like he took a little too many sacks, and I also think that Texas game he played out of his freaking mind. But I go back and watch, the Arizona State game, the Washington State game. Pressure and getting off the spot was poor. He looks like a pure pocket quarterback, and things can really devolve when he's off his spot. J.J. McCarthy is going to test well. I think the comparison that I've seen now a few times with him is Alex Smith in terms of being that good of an athlete. My biggest issue with McCarthy right now from a traits perspective is he's a little skinny. I wish he's a little thicker. But
that comes with time too.
Yeah.
I'm going to roll. There's some good conversations in here. I'm going to lead it with Jason, and I'm going to roll about 3 of these together. I might not show all of them, but I'm going to hit all these, and then we're going to get out of here. Jason says, can we please get a defensive end / edge in the first round this year if they don't trade down, especially if he's from Alabama? Dallas Turner has been a very popular pick. Some alliteration for you. Very popular pick for the Atlanta Falcons at number 8. Floyd says, yep, Dallas Turner. Alberto Molina says, morning, fellas, we need another top wide receiver to help Drake London. Who you got? And that was followed up by, and see, that's why I'm not going to show them all. Need to get a wide receiver in the draft. It's not necessarily a bad idea. Frankly, you probably need to get 2 wide receivers in this draft. So maybe there's a 3 you trade down and pick up a 4th and a 5th. You need a wide receiver, and if you love the guy on the top, but this is such a deep class, I don't mind waiting until the 2nd round to get my receiver in there.
Especially because you don't need a wide receiver 1.
And I feel like I've been able to, and Nick, I feel like I've been able the last 3 years, just at the Senior Bowl alone, being able to pick out guys, whether it's George Pickens or Christian Watson or Alec Pierce, that are productive wide receivers that I can get on day 2, just because it's so deep. So I don't know that I can get them anywhere, JB. And, he says Penix isn't great on the run. McCarthy's really good on – I think McCarthy's really good on the run. But I did like Penix watching him roll and throw both sides when I watched him live. That's a different story than under pressure, that's for sure. But what really caught me was the arm strength. When Penix was rolling left and he'd let it go, when McCarthy was rolling actually left or right and let it go, I saw very similar trajectories and velocity on that. So I think we are going to get out of here. We went about an hour 10 on Wednesday, like we promised, after short Mondays. Nick and I will be back on Mile High Huddle, youtube.com/Mile High Huddle, or Facebook the same way tomorrow, doing some building the Broncos. And guess what? The Broncos need a quarterback too. So we'll talk a lot of draft. We'll talk a lot of quarterback because that's what you're interested in. And because of y'all, we follow what you do because of guys like Greg and Edward and Marco Z and Rusty coming in a couple times, Keith and Ellen Johnson, Lawrence Rivera, and Rusty. We know what Rusty wants. Rusty, Drake Moore. He wants Drake May. Rusty, I just think he's going to be out of reach. I think you make the phone calls and you find out we just can't give up what it's going to take because the 3 teams that are going to have the possibility to take Drake May, they need quarterbacks. And you're not going to be able to pay enough to get a team that needs a quarterback to not take their quarterback. Nick, we're going to get out of here. Hope you have a great day. Appreciate all of you for joining us today. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. So many of you have. And if it's also your first time, say hey in the comments. Like hearing from you, saying that you found us. And we like talking back. So on that note, we're going to get out of here. Thanks for being here, everybody. Y'all have a great football Wednesday.
Peace.